Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. I've been out a few weeks, as I've told you, to move around the yard in Florence was rough because, no movements was ever called on time. So, and for you to be able to see other people in other blocks, you have to have a job. You either work in rec, education, or facilities, or you're the compound orderly where you're out there raking rocks. Florence is dry. It's in the mountains, but it's like the red desert. The rocks are red. They don't have any grasses there. They're not trying to water the grass. All they got is a bunch of dirt. And they shut down the Unicor. Unicor used to be a facility where people would go there and make license plate. Like they really did make license plate. We had in Lompoc, we had a print shop. We had a cable shop. In Victorville, I think they were taking parts off of like Jeeps, military Jeeps or military vehicles and stuff. So, but those things supplied the economy. Like these dudes that are going there to work in Unicor are bringing back $300 to $500 checks. There's some people that are making $700, $800. So you have 200, 300 dudes on a compound that are getting $300 to $500 checks every month. That is like a stimulus check for the compound. But those days are over with. I think the union out here, the laborers out here, they filed a lawsuit against the BOP because the BOP are having these people manufacturing all these like couches, chairs, doing road signs, license plate, but they're paying their inmates pennies on the dollar. You're getting paid anywhere between 3 to 10 cents an hour. So the businesses that were out here that were making stuff for the government, because all the BOP did was make stuff for the federal government. They didn't make like any private stuff and sold it out on the market, on the private market. Everything they did, like, my glasses that I had got when I was in Lompoc was made in Lewisburg. So they have all these different facilities throughout the penitentiary that were building stuff for other prisons or for other federal buildings. But these contractors that was out here in the world, they filed a lawsuit because they couldn't compete with the labor force. The BOP is paying the inmates, like I said, you start out at 3 cents an hour, and I think you max out maybe 12 cents an hour. So who out here that has a business can compete with somebody that has practically a slave labor? So the people out here won the lawsuit, and the BOP couldn't keep the Unicors in the USP anymore. There's still some facilities in the FCIs that have Unicor, and maybe 1 or 2 facilities in the USP that have Unicor, but for the most part, that shit's been shut down. So since that shit's been shut down, the level of lifestyle in the USP downgrade because there's not that much money flowing into the system no more. And then for a period of time, we went through, in 2008, the recession, and then the economy now is in the shithole. So I just made that a point. It's like, when I came out to Florence, back on the yard, I had to get a job. And the job was scarce. There's already people in those positions and other people waiting in line for these guys to get shipped out or get fired to get a job. But in rec, even though they already have a certain set space, they can always put you in there and just have you on the roster. But it's hard to get on the roster because when I got to Florence, there's already people there that's been there for years, and they've got, their position in the rec sewed up where they're just hiring their homeboys and stuff. So when I got there was a couple white dudes. One of them, his name is LB from California. He's a skinhead, got swastika, lightning bolts, or whatever. I think he's one of those separatists. But he was in Atwater with me. And me and him never kicked it or anything. And we didn't bump heads or anything, but I know he's a separatist, so there was never an opportunity there to build a rapport, nor that I want to, nor did he. I mean, neither of us wanted to build a rapport. He's a racist dude. I'm who I am. But even though he has his beliefs, when we conduct ourselves, when we interact, there's always a mutual respect. So when I got to Florence, like I said, I know him, I've seen him in Atwater, but me and him never really exchanged any words, and by no means were we even friends. Like, we were cordial, that was it. But when I got to Florence, he was in my block in DA, and he was one of the first one that came to me and introduced me to all the white boys in the block. Like I said, me and him, we're not friends, we knew each other, we were there, but because of what I did in the riot, when it was the Mexicans and the whites, that followed me. Anybody that's in Atwater that was there knew what happened. So when I got to Florence, people already heard about the riot, and there was like 3 or 4 other white boys that was in other blocks that was in Atwater with me. So when I got there, the white community welcomed me, and we was cool. They got me LB and this dude Dave got me a job at Rec. I didn't go do anything. I went over there for the first week, went and raked some rocks in front of the COs to show them that I'm working and all that. But after that, I just go out to Rec and hang out. I wanted a job at Rec because that's the only place that you could see other people from other yards. But through the course of my time, I usually stay within my own community as far as like relationships, friends, homies and stuff. But I met a lot of good men that are black, that are Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, white. And we came to a point where we have a pretty good relationship, understanding where we're still friends now, But I just wanted to share with you today one of the particular white dudes that I met that I became pretty good friends with. The last time I seen him was in 2008. We was in Beaumont together. But we both started out in Lompoc together, ended up getting shipped to Victorville, and then from Victorville getting shipped to Beaumont. Like, everywhere I went, it seemed like he just kept following me, right? His name is Bandit. He's a little older than me, California, white boy. He was already in his 40s late 30s, early 40s when I met him in Lompoc. And the reason I'm sharing you this story about Bandit is because I have a lot of respect for him as far as how he did his time. He was sharing with me, being a white boy in a California penal system is rough. And he's been in the state system for decades. He was already in his, like I said, in his late 30s, early 40s when I met him. But before that, he's been in and out of the state system since he was like 18, 19 years old. But one of the things that he was always proud of, like when we have the conversations, was that he maintained his independence throughout the time that he was in the state joint in California. Yeah, he ran white because he's a white boy. Like, you don't have no choice when it comes to racial lines. But he never joined up with any skinhead gangs, Nazi gang, white supremacist gang. He was just a California dude. His problem, the reason he kept going in and out of the system was he was a heroin junkie, a heroin addict. The generation before me, there was a lot of heroin addicts. I don't care if you were Mexican, whites, black, they all did heroin. For the Mexican, the culture, doing coke, heroin, all that, it's accepted as norm. With the whites, you know, it's understood. Most of them a lot of them that are in the system are addicts that went and robbed banks to feed their heroin addict. You know, and for the blacks, a lot of the blacks that come from the Midwest and the East Coast, like that generation above me, you know, they love that heroin. The California blacks kind of look at it, you know, look at people that does, you know, the hard drugs, heroin, coke, and meth as just, you know, just junkies. You know, they're okay with smoking weed or snorting a line of coke, but if you do heroin, if you shoot up, in their eyes, you fall into a different category of addicts. But the story that I want to share with you about Bandit was during his time in the LA, in the holding. And you know, Bandit lived in my block. He had a pink card. When we was in M Block, they issue out a pink card. A pink card is a 2-hour watch card where no matter where you are throughout the day, between 6 and 10, every 2 hours, you have to report to a staff. They have to call you into the tower. They have to know exactly where you are every 2 hours. If you miss notifying a staff, you know, within those 2-hour time period, and they have to call and look for you, well, they're sending 2 COs to come, and they're gonna fucking escort you ass to the shoe, and you're gonna sit there for a week or two. They're gonna write you up for refusing programming, and gonna give you a week or two in the shoe and let you back out. I know from firsthand experience because I was placed on a pink card. The first 10 years of my bid, I was on a pink card. You know, it was pink. We just call it a pink card because it was pink. But everywhere I went, I had to notify the CO. Hey, I'm over here at rec. Hey, I'm over here in the library every 2 hours. If I miss reporting in, they're going to lock me up. You know, so that's how me and Bandit started our conversation. I was like, you know, because I'm looking at him, and I think I might be wrong on his case because we never really got into his case, you know, but I think he's in there for robbing a bank to feed his heroin addiction. But robbing a bank doesn't necessarily give you a pink card. Pink cards are people that are a potential flight risk, you know, escapees, or people that they deem a little extra violent. And so when I see people with certain tags on them and stuff, I get curious because, you know, their personality and what is being perceived of them or whatever might not coincide. So for me, I just really want to get to know somebody better, and why, if this, it's just me doing my homework to know who's dangerous, who's not, who's affiliated, so on and so forth. So how Bandit came about getting his pink card was he was in LA, and his cellie was a Russian dude. Now, these are not your ordinary Russians. These are Russians that were like ex-KGB, you know, ex-government, and are now on the black market, are operating on the black market, selling arms and drugs or whatever to whoever. So there was these 2 Russian dudes that was out in LA, and they got arrested. I'm not sure if they were being arrested because they were suspected of being potential spies or some other, like, he didn't really get into the details, but he was selling with one of the Russians. And these 2 Russians, they're planning an escape. You know, they've been through this before. They're ex-military. So, but for them to build, because, you know, they're both locked up, all their people is in Russia. So for them to be able to escape, they have to be able to send somebody some money and buy some stuff and put it together. It's not simple. I spent 24 years. Every morning I get out, when I walk the yard, I look around, I see the wall, I see the gun tower, I see the rows of barbed wire fence. And yeah, every day I wish that I could figure a way to get over the wall, you know, but looking at it, I've never had military training. I've never escaped from any type of facility. So my brain doesn't work that way. And as much as I tried, I could never figure out a way out. Because if I did, I'd probably still be on the run right now or in a third world country. Who the fuck wants to sit there for 26 years, right? But anyway, so the Russian dude is telling Bandit that he's trying to escape and that he needs this, and that. But Bandit doesn't have any people on the streets to have the money wired to him and all that, right? So anyway, Bandit finds somebody else and he gets this one guy. And they go through the visit, they have the conversation. The guy gets his girl involved because they need to send some money somewhere. Well, anyway, they finally hooked up with the girl, and the Russians, Western Union, this girl like 200-something grand. Now, the funny part about the story is that these Russian dudes are not dumb. They're ex-government officials, military dudes. So they've been operating for over how many years, so they should know exactly what they're doing. And one of the things that they should know is that how the fuck are you just gonna wire 200 grand from another country into the United States, right? So when he was talking to Bandit, he wants to take Bandit with him, Bandit, but he's got his homeboy, his partner, on another floor. So his thing was he's going to dig a hole or whatever once he gets supply into the shower, get to the upstairs floor to get his partner out, and then make their escape. So with the money that they sent, they bought hydraulics. I don't know what I understand what a hydraulic is. I never seen one, but I guess it's something that you could put under the window and hit a button because it's whatever electric, and the force of it should be able to open or spread the whatever. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but they bought hydraulics, they bought equipment, they bought a safe house, and according to what Bandit was telling me, he got out of that room but was on his way, but he didn't want to leave because he wanted to go upstairs or go to another block to get his partner. He didn't want to leave his partner behind. And the other person that was in there was a Korean dude named Mike. He's like one of the few cool Koreans that I met in the penitentiary. I know a lot of Koreans out here that are cool, but the ones I've been locked up with, they're a little weird as far as what I'm accustomed to. But Korean Mike, he was cool as shit. And he was selling one of the Russians, one of the other Russians. So him, Bandit, that's how they were both in Lompoc with me. Mike and Bandit. So when Bandit was sharing the story, he pointed Korean Mike out. And he was like, man, I really respect your homeboy, Korean Mike. Because the Russians, he was facing a lot of time. He ended up with a couple decades, Korean Mike. But when they were plotting their escape, they offered to take Mike with them. But Mike was like, man, you guys are white. You guys can blend in with, once you guys escape, you guys can blend in with, with the civilians and move about. Because you guys are just, some white dudes. But if there's a report, there's 3 white dudes and 1 Asian, then, their little party might be easier to spot than if it was just 3 white dudes. But the Russian was asking Bandit, at this time, the federal government hasn't come and gotten our DNA yet. They didn't get our DNA until, I think, 2010. In 2001 or 2002, they came and tried to get, they had put me on a call out for sick call. When I went to go sick call, because I didn't put any requests. I wasn't sick or anything, so I'm a little curious why they're calling me to medical. So when I went to medical in Lompoc, the lady was sitting there with a little tube and a cotton swab and some papers to sign. And I was like, what's this? It's like, oh, the court say we're here to get your DNA. And me, my mentality is always buck. And I'm like, huh? My DNA? I'm not giving you my DNA. They're like, oh, are you refusing? I said, yeah, I'm refusing. And I left. But it turned out every single person in Lompoc at that time, when their name was on the call out for medical, and when they went up and found out that they were trying to get their DNA, get a saliva swab, everybody in Lompoc refused to give those people their DNA. We didn't sit around and talk about it or plot or made a decision to put down a group demonstration. It was just the mentality that our mentality is to buck first, because we know everything that the system is trying to do is not something to help us. It's not something, that is going to be positive for us in the long run. No matter how good, how pretty it sounds, the system is not trying to do anything for you. So every time they implement a new rule or whatever, people like me, our natural instinct is to buck. So in 2001, 2002, they couldn't collect no DNA from anybody in the BOP. But when I got to Atwater, like I said, around 2009 or 2010, they locked down the prison. They called a lockdown. So everybody thought like something happened. We all went in, got locked down in our cell, and then they came one by one, pull us out into the back of the unit, and we come in the hallway in the unit. There's a table with 3 staffs sitting there with their tubes and a cotton swab. But on the other side of the staff is about 4 or 5 COs armed with bean bags and shotgun. And on the other side, the same thing. So me and Bryson, we were celly. So when they call us out to the hallway, we look, and there's 10 armed COs, 5 on that side, 5 on this side. So there's a table with 3 staff, and they're all holding their freaking shotgun up in a bean bag, and they're like, I'm like, man, what's all this? Like, oh, we have a court order to get your DNA. Could you stick this in your mouth and swab out your cheek for us? So me and Bryson look at each other. Over there, there's, 4 or 5 COs armed with bean bags. They're all dressed up in their turtle suit already. There's another handful over here. But I don't think this is Lompoc anymore. So I grabbed the cotton swab and gave him my DNA. Because by that time, it was court ordered. When they came and asked for your DNA, if you didn't volunteer it, they had authority to restrain you and extract it from you. So back to Bandit. So they are, the Russian dude, like I said, he was an ex-military, and he was asking Bandit, like, do they have your DNA? And Bandit's like, no, I don't have my DNA. And Russian is like, oh, that's too bad, because if they already had your DNA on file, his thing was, the plan for the Russians was, once they escape, wherever they're headed, there's going to end up being a plane crash or a car crash where there's going to be bodies in the accident, in the crash, that the authorities can come and extract DNA from the body and confirm that it belongs to the people that just escaped. These dudes were highly connected. It's just they're on foreign soil dealing with the United States government. And you already know, everybody should know firsthand, it's hard to beat the government. So anyway, the first guy escaped, I think, and he was on his way to go get his people on the 2nd floor. But they never made it because they ended up getting arrested and swooped up, transferred somewhere else, and locked down. So what turned out at the end, what had happened was when the Russian wired this dude's girl $250,000, You already know you do back then. You do any transaction over 10,000, you got to fill out a form and you got to notify the IRS. So when the money came, the flag was already, the red flag already came up. The feds already swooped up on that dude's girl, and she ended up turning and cooperating with them, and they allowed her to go withdraw the money, to go buy the hydraulics, to go buy everything else that they needed to plot their escape. But like I said, right before they were able to accomplish it, they came and got hemmed up. So that's how Bandit ended up being an M block with me with a pink card, because he was part of that crew. He didn't get charged with anything of that, but he was like the Russian celly, and he just got caught up in the whole situation with them. But, in the federal system, it's not just gangbangers, drug dealers, cartel members, or whatever, but there's a lot of international criminals. It's a trip. I've met people from all over the world doing all sorts of different stuff. The BOP is full of people from all around the world. Welcome to the USP.